Right, so I'll get started by going through a quick run through of how you ended up actually specializing in rehab, but in the jiu-jitsu space as opposed to just
Mm.
doing generic rehab. So how did you end up in jiu-jitsu rehab?
I was just very fortunately like plopped into the environment. So originally, while I was studying at uni, so this was still like first year, I think. Um, I got into watching a lot of MMA and obviously watching UFC and stuff. And when it went to the ground, I was very, I was like very curious to know what it was that was happening. I didn't fully understand what was going on in it. I thought it looked pretty cool. I wasn't that standard like, I'll stand them up, unless
So were you
obviously.
doing jiu-jitsu while she was at
No,
uni?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's pretty much how I looked into it. So I was like, what is this? It's like, oh, it's jiu-jitsu. I'm like, okay. So then I found a place near me and I started training there and then I started working there just on the reception team. Um,
Is that where you are now? Or have
yeah,
you moved?
literally the same gym. Yeah, yeah.
Right, okay.
From like 10 years ago to now. So like while I was studying up until that point. Um, and it did get to the point where like as I was approaching um, graduating, where I had to kind of think about what am I going to do here as a career. And I was like, I can just do this as a PT. I can literally just do it as my own thing. Like, I don't necessarily need to have a clinic space. So I started doing that, and then I was really liking jiu-jitsu. So I was like, how can I combine even just like the business name? It was like, how can I combine the name here, And then someone
I
actually
think
gave me the
I
idea.
think the name like sticks well for jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
for a good
it
reason.
actually is really good. I can't take any credit for it. It wasn't me that came up
Oh,
with it. Shout out to
right now.
to Naya, quad damn it Naya. She came up with that originally.
A good name.
Um, she yeah, because I was just like, how do I, I was like trying to come and she just came up with Roles of Rehab and I was like, I'm gonna take that. Um, and that's when I was just thinking at the time, how can I put these two passions together? Like I really love jujitsu. So if I can't train, if I'm injured, or when I was like really busy at uni, it's like I would just dive in a lot into the rehab and my enthusiasm and passion there. And then obviously when I'm able to train and I'm training, I feel like I dive a lot into jiu-jitsu. So it's like two big things in my life that I kind of like go all in for, I guess you could say. So yeah, I realized pretty early on that I want to put the two together, and I feel like yeah, I was just in the environment and it worked out well, I would say for that.
Yeah. Did you how long was it until you got your first injury doing jiu-jitsu?
Oh shit. Well, I
I
definitely
thought
picked up.
you were gonna say actually that you got injured and then it was like a rehab process for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, like a beautiful story of how it
Well, that was
all
kind of my
went.
story, but
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah, it goes well for sure. Nah, like I mean, annoyingly, the first time I had to proper take time off jiu-jitsu was actually like I had a hand eczema problem, and that was getting flared up from jiu-jitsu, which, from how sweaty it is and like the gi and
yeah,
how
yeah.
harsh it is. So that was when it was like I had to take time off and deal with that. And then at the same time, that was around about the time where I was like heading into exams in like my final year and stuff. So I'd trained for a couple of years already. That was my first proper like big time off. I'm trying to think what my first actual injury was. To be fair, because I've popped both elbows, like UCL kind of area.
Right.
Uh,
Here the list comes of all the
yeah,
injuries.
literally, no, it actually does. Right, popped my left ankle, left
I was
LCL.
going to talk to you about injuries, but we've started already. So
Yeah, yeah, it's a very easy segue. If you talk about jiu-jitsu, like injuries is going to come up
literally,
at
yeah.
some point, right? Like they go hand in hand. That's the crazy thing about the culture of jiu-jitsu is these two things are very closely related. And then if you look at the relationship, it's something that's very poorly managed. Like people like to ignore the kind of injuries and like, oh, just keep training. Like there's some kind of like I don't know if we call it bravado or just stupidity, right? Is what I think it is. But people just want to train, like they love training, and I think it's a big deal to go. I have to stop doing this and actually address like an issue I'm having, right? Or I have to temporarily change something. It's like people don't want to admit that they are in a situation that they have to deal with. I think that's probably part of it.
Do you feel
Uh,
like that's the same in like just everyday gym people though. People who do CrossFit, for example, there's a
Right.
lot of stuff going on in terms of injury, but it's not like in jiu-jitsu, you know when shit goes wrong.
Hmm.
So it's highlighted a bit more kind of in your face.
Sure.
Whereas something in like another sport like CrossFit might just be building up in the background, like a slow exposure to something, and then you're like, oh, I'm aching, I can't move or something. So do you
Yeah.
feel like there is just that you understand that point of, oh shit, I need to do something about it because you really felt it when you're rolling with someone?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those where in like jiu-jitsu, the likely thing that's going to happen is like a joint, you're in a joint submission, something pops,
Yeah,
and then shit afterwards swells up. It's like it's pretty obvious that something's happened here, right? Where, as you said, it's a bit more gradual with CrossFit, where like, oh, maybe a restriction starts coming in, or I'm
yeah,
starting to
definitely,
get this
yeah,
nagging pain that's just repeating and repeating, and maybe worsening over time. That can still happen in jits, don't get me wrong, but like, yeah,
yeah,
you're right. It will be a lot more typically in your face, like, hey, you should probably deal with this. But the wild thing in my experience is having is I think there's a big gap in knowledge and understanding for from like a common sense point of view for people within jiu-jitsu when they look at how to fully rehab their injuries, because oftentimes what it is they'll get it to the point that they're satisfied with, like, okay, I can still roll with this, like it's still on my mind, it's still a vulnerability, like maybe I can't play a certain thing on this particular side or I have to avoid a move, but they mentally accept that's okay, I'm going to keep doing what I need to do with this. And then they never bridge the gap, right? So then the
yeah.
injury that happened in the past isn't just a thing of the past anymore. It's like continually present for this person. And I see that as a big problem because it's just like, how can you, or why would you, if you understand there's two realities here, one of the realities being this is a thing of the past, I don't think about it, I just train fully, I can fully let go of that being a thing. But then the other reality is the one you're sitting in, which is I've just accepted that this is going to be a little bit of shit. It's not as shit as it was before, so I'm okay with that. And then I just have to like train in a limited kind of capacity forever. It's like
It's
that.
like
Yeah,
the, would you say like the inconvenience isn't big enough to warrant continually
yeah,
progressing something
basically.
until someone screws you over again, rolling with you?
Yeah, literally. That is
Yeah,
usually what it is. And then it's like, oh, they did this, and it's like, bro, it's not really their fault for doing a normal move. Your
yeah,
knees didn't have the capacity to handle it. It should have been addressed before, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, weird one.
yeah.
Weird one.
When you do you see a lot of new people coming into jiu-jitsu where you are? Do you get a lot of new people coming in, or is it
Oh,
more
definitely,
advanced
definitely
based?
over the last few years,
Last few
100%.
years.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the biggest eye opener when it comes to movement that hits them during their first few sessions? And I have experience with this because do you know
Ooh.
my experience with jiu-jitsu?
I know we've talked about it in the past, but I can't
I
fully remember.
I did it for 3 months and I um I actually got injured, but I didn't get injured in a. There's not a cool story behind it. I was actually just
Okay.
doing a warm up and I
Yeah.
stubbed my toe into the mat,
Oh,
but
yeah,
not
yeah.
not just the mat. It kind of went in the corner of like the cracks of four mats meeting each other. And
Oh,
honestly, it was like 3 months of trying to get my foot into a position where I could extend my toe again, and it kind of screwed me
mhm.
up in other training as well.
Right.
And I haven't gone back since. I'm not saying I haven't gone back because of that injury. Like other stuff
Mhm.
happened where it was like it's a bit of a commute for me to get there as well.
Sure, sure.
But I haven't been back since, and I also am going to go back. But my like silly injury is the reason I'm not there now, continually doing it.
Yeah, I
So
hear
I
that.
wasn't even like rolling with someone. I literally was doing a warm up, and I literally just called it stuck in a mat.
That
I
is
was
an
like, stop
annoying
it.
one. Yeah, that is an
Yeah.
annoying injury for sure.
But yeah, so going back to when you first see people coming in, do you feel like there's certain things that just hit them in regards to like movement that they can't do or mobility restrictions that are like, I didn't think jiu-jitsu was going to be like this?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's to the degree like that it's like I feel like with that it would come with it has to come with a certain level of like self-awareness there, where it's like, oh, this actually requires quite a lot of my body. And some I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of people that come in or um the as it's been popularized, right, and it's gotten more eyeballs on it, a lot of the people that come in, it's like it's a nice blend of people, but then also you get the crowd of those that maybe haven't done much um like sporting activity for a big part of their adult life, and they're
Yeah.
seeing this and they're recognizing like, fuck, I haven't really been taking this seriously. It's been a big part of my life now where I've just been, just been working and focusing on family. And they
Yeah.
come in and it's like, this is a pretty high demanding
It literally
uh,
is.
physical capacity, requiring kind of sport, and you get thrown into it, and it's kind of just like, right, here you go, here's your uniform, best of luck, kind of thing, right? But there is a lot of, um, I suppose you could say prerequisite, but the way I would look at that is more so from understanding that every technique you do is a form of movement expression, and with that movement expression is going to come with some kind of physical capacity needed, right? So if I'm going to perform a triangle choke, it's like, in order for me to get this leg over this person's neck, right, and go
Yeah.
around their neck, I need to be able to externally rotate my hip. And it's like, if I literally have, like, if you assess my hip then and I have like 5 degrees hip external rotation, and then you try to teach me a triangle choke, you're not going to be surprised that I'm
Yeah.
struggling
Yeah. And
to
it's just
even perform it.
exhausting trying to get your body into position and then not understanding why your leg won't go there.
Yeah, yeah, and it goes both ways, right? Because the coach is then coming up with like probably new cues that are actually really good, that they're
Yeah.
perfectly, technically sound, and the person can understand those cues. And as they try to perform it, it's like, look, my hip is literally just not bending or moving in
Yeah.
this direction. It's like I can't, I'm having to use X, Y, and Z. And then obviously when that transfers into live sparring, like they might make it work in the drilling context. When it transfers into live sparring, it's like, because there's so many more
Yeah.
adjustments you have to make. Yeah, it's
And it's
just
faster and you're trying to control a lot more stuff
yeah,
going on. And
yeah,
then that
yeah,
movement you're trying to get into just doesn't happen.
exactly. And then you pair that on top of the fact that the person
You're
was that they're
exhausted.
they're relatively new. Yeah, exactly. They're going to be exhausted because they're putting a lot of energy into it. So maybe that would be a little bit deterring. But if anything, it weeds out. Not that I think it should wean out, but it will wean out those who are going to be more resilient to that versus those who are going to quit with it. So if you have all these things that just make it so it sucks for you, but you just keep showing up, you are
Yeah.
going to break through in some degree, right? And then it gets to the point where it's important enough for you, then you start asking yourself those questions. How can I actually um, make improvements in this capacity? So I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not surprised, even with the growth of the sport and the growth of the knowledge around the sport. Like, I feel like you see a lot more content online with regards to how to actually physically prepare yourself better for jiu-jitsu. That there's a lot more S&C talked about around jiu-jitsu. It doesn't surprise me if you get that person that comes in, they haven't really had, a lot of their adult life, they haven't really been taking being fit and strong seriously. They get exposed in jiu-jitsu, but they recognize how much they actually like doing it. They want to continue doing it. And then they just develop an understanding as they continue that, oh, actually, I do need to look at this and this. And next thing you know, they have like an actual routine that they're following, and they're taking their S&C a bit more seriously. And but that's what I want to see anyway. Is a bit more of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, the first thing I noticed in terms of movement when I first started doing my first sessions there, I was in a warm up and it was something just like forward rolls and backwards
Mhm.
rolls. And if you haven't done them in 10 years, it is like, what the hell is going on here? Like the technique just wasn't there. It was kind of just like
Yeah.
slapping onto the mats.
Yeah.
And for someone like I train a lot and I feel like I'm quite mobile, I take care of my body, like obviously it's my line of work as well. But as
Mhm.
soon as I went into that environment and I was exposed to just tumbling, I was like, this is a completely new experience to me. And I had no kind of awareness at all of what like how this should even be performed and how fatiguing it is as well at the same time. Like
Yeah.
just doing backwards rolls to the other side of the room, and I was like, this is another stimulus altogether.
Yeah, literally, literally. Yeah, if I feel like if you just haven't, like you said, if you haven't done it in ages, your body's like, how the fuck do we coordinate this? Like, what are we doing? But then
Yeah,
we just, in order for us to kind of like do a good job and feel like we did a good job and feel like the instructor isn't looking at you, think like cringing at how bad you're doing, you kind of give it way more effort than you need to. Do you know what I mean? Because you haven't got it
pretty right.
figured
Yeah,
out yet. Yeah, which is why I think it also adds to it potentially looking clunky, but also adds to the fact that you're just exhausted from hitting 3 backward rolls like
and then
down the.
feeling dizzy because you've never done them in 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good one. Yeah. How did you find shrimping? Like, do you
Oh,
remember
that
the
you know
shape?
what? When I first done that, I was like, what is this movement? Because you feel like
Yeah.
shit doing it as well, don't you? When you first do it, and you have no awareness of what you're even trying to do or why you're doing shrimping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I remember when we first went through them, I didn't actually understand what are we doing shrimping for, and I understand it's to get out of a position quickly now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember the coach saying, "Oh, hip extension, and then turn to one side and push through." And in my head, like I understand that, but I was trying to do the movement. I was like, it took me 20 to 30 reps to get it, and that was just on one side. And then I tried the other side. I was like, this is like completely foreign again.
Yeah.
So that exactly like I said with forward and backward rolls, shrimping was a completely new one that
Mhm.
I just felt like I was awful, and I was like, I come into this with 10 years of training experience, and I'm like blown away by how hard everything is. But it was also very fun at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely quickly becomes like easy and second nature, like that one and all the other moves as well. And then it's just like rinse and repeat from that point. So for me personally, when I look at that and the almost like the necessity behind it and like the skill acquisition, I feel like a lot of people from a beginner's level should go through that, and then you'll probably get to the point where it's like I don't need to drill this anymore, and then you're
Yeah,
just past that point. So afterwards, it's used a bit more as like just warming up the body rather than like, hey, you actually need to develop this way of moving. Because when you look at the shrimping and what it signifies, I guess, right, is like it kind of does highlight that where your hips are matters a lot.
yeah,
And it's like if you understand as a concept, I feel like that does help quite a lot in jits in
yeah,
many different areas of jits and different positions and whatever you're doing. But so once you get kind of past that point, it is literally just like cool, just do this to warm up the body. Otherwise, yeah, you've got
yeah.
what you need, I think, in that department.
So at a beginner level, do you feel like the main thing is just developing awareness? Like you don't have an understanding of hip external rotation, shoulder internal. You're just like, my hips just don't move. Like, and just developing an understanding from that position of just feeling tight and getting used to the positions. That's like the first step is just building awareness.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much, and it's forced on you. Like you don't really have a choice.
Yeah,
So either you can just continue to be completely, because then it's up to you, right? So this thing that you're doing is it's going to highlight those things. So then if you pay attention to that and you go, because I feel like I've had this conversation with a lot of people where it's like, let's say we do a session on the shoulder, they have a bit of a shoulder issue, and I assess their internal rotation, and I'm like, look, this isn't very good. We could improve this.
whose is?
Yeah, right. And I kind of tell them, I'm like, look, I'm not going to say you've always had this restriction. Obviously, now you've got pain or you've injured your shoulder. That which came first, the chicken or the egg? But they will tell me themselves, oh, I've always had to tap really early in kimuras because it just feels like I don't have
Yeah,
much, to go. So they have a lot of the time. People will get the information, like they will get the information given to them smack bang in their face on a silver platter, probably multiple times, right? They've been hit with a kimura. They know they have to tap early. That's just part of their like identity now within jiu-jitsu.
yeah, I get
But
that.
then it's doing the next step. It's like, okay, well, what can I do with this information? Like, I know I have a limitation here. What can I now do with this information to potentially improve that? Can I actually be someone who doesn't have to tap early in Ikimura? I feel like people would benefit from asking themselves that question more often, I think.
Yeah. So if you were, say you were starting fresh again, you were quite immobile, and you had to pick one, I guess, one range of motion you want to work on to help you progress in jiu-jitsu in terms of like injury
Mm.
mitigation, what joint would it be and what range? If it's hip, it's
Oh,
shoulder, I don't know what you're going to say here. I'm just
okay, yeah.
throwing the
Oh,
feelers out there.
that's an interesting. I like that with this question, there's even if you ask like different experienced practitioners that also have a bit of a clinician background, I feel like you could still get different answers just depending
Yeah,
on
definitely, yeah. What's
actually.
your experience with what you've rehabbed, what you see people tapping out on quickly?
I feel
Or
like
maybe it's just people moving around the mats better. So I could be thinking maybe hips in that sense.
honestly, I feel like I've seen so many knees now
Knees,
that
fair enough.
yeah, I feel like I've seen so many knees that area locally from like having the knee flexion in terms of sitting heel to butt, but probably more so um, like collateral ligaments with like the varus and valgus stresses that you get from just oftentimes a lack of hip rotational capacity.
Yeah. So we're,
Like
we're
I've seen
tying
that.
this in with hips now rather than
yeah,
the knee
yeah, yeah.
itself,
So,
even though
so
the knee is like the culprit. not the
Right.
culprit.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is
Exactly.
like the thing that's getting damaged.
Yeah. It kind of is the question there. It's like, well, obviously there's some good technical aspects to it because, like for example, with the knees taking on stress from like whether you have the hip capacity or you don't have the hip capacity, it can still occur if you perform techniques in certain ways. And a really good resource or video for this was from Lachlan Giles. Like he did a video. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. So if you don't know who Lachlan Giles is, jiu-jitsu black belt, a bit of a legend in the sport because he's accomplished some pretty cool stuff like leg locking like people much heavier than him at the highest level of competition, right? And at the same time, he has a PhD in physiotherapy, so it's a pretty cool, combination
Yeah.
for an individual right there. But he did a really good video on why Gordon Ryan ruptured his LCL when he did like a leg entanglement. I think it was with Joao Rocha or someone like that. But that was a really good video because it talked about just the mechanics of the technique that was applied and why that would lead to increasing risk of tearing the LCL. But then he also showed like an actual, another technique that you could use that would actually protect that a lot more because you don't have to stress the knee in that way. So even if and I feel like Gordon Ryan's a pretty flexible person from what I've seen in the past and like how he rolls and just like competition footage. So it's like in that case, it's like even if you have really good hip external rotation, you're probably still going to be at an increased risk if you perform that technique that certain way.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people I've seen where they strain their LCL or their MCL, oftentimes it will come down to just like technical awareness, and then oftentimes as well there may be some physical restrictions too, like at the hip and what they can actually handle there. So I do feel like hips is a pretty big one. Like for me, hips, and then I would go for external rotation. So that's my long-winded answer to
You
the
go
question.
external. I
Yeah.
was wondering whether you were going to go internal or external on the hips.
External, you just use a lot more.
Right. Okay.
You just use way more. Like internal will happen, but external for a
I feel
lot of
like
people.
internal, like correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like if you're in an internally rotated position, especially if you're defending, you're that's not going to be as strong as in an externally rotated position if you're sitting with your hips. Like you're more vulnerable to something happening in internal rotation. Would that
Yeah,
make sense to you?
100%. Yeah,
And then you don't have as much force transfer when you're trying to maybe lock someone in internal rotation. Is there any positions where you actually do that?
that's a good question. Kind of a bit in like a triangle choke. So your main leg working is an external rotation, but you can
Okay.
close the space more effectively. The other leg, the secondary leg, if we call it that, that is going to go over or to on the side of their arm. If you internally rotate that hip, you kind
Yeah.
of close the space even more, and that kind of feels like you lock up the triangle better. Um,
Okay.
Other than that, I can't think of anything else where you're like locking a position with internal rotation. There are times where if someone's trying to pass your guard, like pass your legs, and you're on your back, and you don't have time to turn and externally rotate the far leg to then retain guard, you might use your closer leg to internally rotate just to catch them and
Right.
then use that to kind of turn
Yeah.
towards them again. But other than that, you're not using the main thing with
I
internal
feel like
rotation,
because
it happening to you,
I
right?
feel like
Like,
because I'm not that exposed to. I've only done 3 months of it. I can ask these questions and have no bias. So me
yeah, I hear
asking it, I'm like, I have
that.
no idea.
True. Yeah, yeah. So I could just be talking shit, and you got no idea. Like,
Pretty
if
much.
yeah, yeah.
I have a little bit of knowledge, but not enough to kind of argue the point with you.
Yeah, it's like with internal rotation, there's going to be some protective things there in terms of like when you're getting something that's called knee reaping. If you're getting reaped, you're being forced into internal rotation, and it's just valgus position for the knee. Like that's basically what's
Okay.
happening. Um, but a lot of the time, when you need to demonstrate a hip capacity from a flexibility standpoint, I feel like external rotation shows up far more often than internal. So that's why that's my
Yeah.
answer. Like a lot of guards and even submissions that are put on, and even just body triangles and all these kind of positions require hip external rotation.
Okay.
So that's why I would favor like that particular range of motion. If I had to choose one, that's what I'd go for.
Okay, so if you're new coming into jiu-jitsu, work on your hip external rotation, and it's
for
going to be a little bit
sure.
easier for you.
Yeah, and if I could throw some other stuff, obviously you said I can only pick one, but it's like,
Yeah, I said you can only pick one, yeah, because it
yeah,
was going to be everything, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, kind of, yeah. Like in a way, it would. Like, there's a lot of shoulder capacity that would be nice to have, and just like you need to train your neck. Like so many
Yeah,
people don't
yeah.
know that you absolutely should train your neck.
I think a
Um,
lot of people fear training the neck because, like, you don't see it, do you? You don't see it in mainstream
True.
fitness, really. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, with everything on social media now, you probably have been exposed to it. But But I feel like if you're following any sort of combat sport, you will see people training their neck. But if you don't follow combat sports, you won't see that. So I feel like because of that, general population who don't do jiu-jitsu or any combat sport, they're not exposed to neck training at all. But I suppose they don't need to be in a way because they're not going to be impacted the same way as you guys are.
Yeah, true. Like the demands are obviously there for grapplers in general, jiu-jitsu, wrestlers, etc.
Yeah.
Your neck strength and actually training that as part of your routine
I
is
actually
exponentially
had
more important for sure.
serious I had serious neck DOMs the first few sessions after, and again, when you're new to something, you get DOMs everywhere. But I've never experienced neck DOMs before, especially when I hadn't actively done anything neck specific. It was just getting
Yeah,
pinned down and kind of crushed for maybe
yeah,
20 minutes, rolling with someone. I don't know.
yeah. Literally,
Yeah,
literally, it shows up in so many different ways. In so many different ways. Like you don't even have to be wrestling for it to, because wrestling is an easier one to understand that your neck is taking a beating because people are just literally clubbing you and collar
yeah,
tying
I get
you,
that.
right? They're trying to pull your head down to the mat. But in jiu-jitsu, there's like these little ways that in the moment perhaps you don't really recognize it, and then the next day you wake up and your neck's a bit stiff. You're like, fucking hell, like my neck's been through something. Yeah,
Yeah. So I was actually going to say to you, I mean, this might be the most common injury though is the knee, right? For you at the minute, as like a practitioner in jiu-jitsu, that's the
that's
most.
what I've experienced anecdotally. Yeah, I haven't taken. This will be good to do actually. That I should probably do. I haven't taken everyone I've worked with that has come with me through jiu-jitsu and then actually got the statistics on it. But
I
whenever,
reckon you
from
could
what I'm
say
just
that off the
aware
top of
of,
your head, though, right? Like the top three that come in.
yeah, knee is absolutely in the top three for
Okay,
sure.
what would
Yeah.
be second and third then?
Um,
Wait, let me have a
sure.
guess
Okay.
from my
Yeah.
3 month experience.
Yeah. Bring in the
Um,
expertise, Josh.
I'm gonna throw in fingers, but
That's a
it depends if you're doing no gi
Nogi
or
Ogi, yeah. I feel like Nogi's gotten a lot more popularized, so I definitely
yeah.
get a lot of people that come to me where it's like, oh, I just do Nogi, or they do very little gi, so then fingers aren't really as much of a problem.
So fingers are more gi related because you're getting it caught in the gi itself.
Yeah, and there's just a lot more demand on your grip
And
and all that
yeah.
stuff, so your fingers definitely take a bit more of a hounding in comparison.
Okay, so we'll go with the statistics for no gi then. So we've got knee at the top. I'm gonna say elbow, and then I'm gonna say. Oh, what am I gonna say? And I'm gonna say neck.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I would throw so
Just thinking of what hurt me the most.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, yeah, relate it to your personal experience.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen a fair amount of neck and elbow. I would probably keep neck there, actually, in the top three, and I'd just replace elbow with shoulder. For
Okay.
in terms of how many I've seen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But do
yeah,
you feel
yeah.
like that's because people? Well, so you've gone knee, you've gone elbow second, or
Yeah.
shoulder second.
I'd probably go knee first, honestly. Knee
Yeah.
first, shoulder second, and then neck would be third. Or if I could just put neck and spine together, that would be a nice one to kind of
Yeah.
have the
Fair enough.
third place. Bronze medal right there.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of? I'm just looking through what I see on your social media. I see a lot of. I don't see a lot of neck stuff going on. Do you feel like people don't address the neck even if it's injured? They kind of let that pass compared to a knee, which is kind of in your face. You've really hurt it. Where a neck is kind of for a lot of people more chronic, and they just kind of deal with it.
Yeah, a big thing I hear around necks is like, oh, I just didn't sleep properly, or I slept
I
in a
literally
weird
hear all the time.
position.
Slept on it
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, slept funny. So it's like, so I feel like it can be kind of discarded quite easily. It's like, oh, it'll
Yeah.
clear up in a few days, or they have a history pattern of it being cleared up in a few days. But if something happens to your knee, and you're reminded about it being a problem with your knee constantly because you're weight bearing on it, right? It's a bit
Yeah.
more like, oh fuck, okay, like this feels a bit more serious, a bit more vulnerable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so in a way that could like sway your results for who you see because the knee is like in your face and the neck,
yeah,
you just deal with it.
hundred
Everyone's
percent.
got a stiff neck, so
Yeah, everyone's got yeah. It's like man, we grapple. Of course, we've got a stiff neck. Of
yeah,
course,
that's just part
even
of
when I
it.
was grappling regular, I had this conversation with someone as well, where they were kind of saying, um, it's kind of normal to have that, right? And I was like, and this was when I was grappling a decent amount, like at least, well, I say decent amount, at least a few times a week, right? So there's some regularity there. And I was just saying to them, like, I don't have issues with my neck, like, I don't feel stiffness, and I showed full range. And at that point, I was taking like neck training very seriously.
Yeah,
Um, Not to say that there's not still a prevalence or an injury risk for me,
yeah,
but just kind of demonstrate that my body started showing up differently when I taught it that I want to have a higher capacity in this area, and then it
yeah,
just shit happened for me. Whereas like before that, and I know before, from my personal experience, before that there was a lot of times of me just waking up and like my neck being stiff and things just being really sore there, and it takes a couple days. So I've been that person, and I have seen a big difference between me properly training my neck versus me having not done in the past. So
yeah. So if we look at neck training, what were you doing specifically for the neck, just in general? What were you trying to
in,
build up tolerance? What angle or sort of what positions were you using?
yeah, I would say a massive one is like neck extensor strength
Okay.
and being comfortable with loading the neck. And when I say neck extensors, for those listening that may not know, I just mean back of the neck, basically, like that
Yeah.
drive your head back,
You're
right?
working
So
on driving your head backwards.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And then getting comfortable doing that in like deeper positions of neck flexion as well.
So
Honestly, I train my neck in all directions.
stretching it at the same time as training extension. You're doing
Yeah,
an end
yeah,
range
yeah.
stretch. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, but even doing that under load as well, like getting comfortable doing that under load. Like you can just do the typical get the whatever the head harness is hanging a weight off
Yeah.
and actually just going through some loaded ranges, like that's fine, right? I was doing a lot of ISO holds and I was doing a lot of like explore ranges. I mean, I literally did some neck training yesterday, so this is a nice fresh
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
but that was literally just me supersetting um, neck holds that I did on the wall. So like back of the head, front, side on. And then I did a rotation one where I'm fully rotated and I got like the side back of my head on the wall. So just trying to like do
So you
two.
have a lot of value with isometrics. You feel like there's a lot of value in
Yeah.
them for it because most of the positions are, if you're pinned down,
Mhm.
surely it's like a sustained isometric hold whilst creating tension.
A lot of the time, yeah. Yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of the time. It's a
Until you
nice
get out of
like
that position.
yeah, even if you don't, what I like about that is obviously you can look at the specifics there with how that could be integrated into the sport, or just the fact that that occurs a lot in sport. But if we take that out and you just look at the isometrics as a thing by themselves, and you look at that with training the neck, you can see there how it's quite a nice entry point to loading, right? Because you can scale it really nicely. You can get some, like, I can demonstrate to someone like a position and hold a position,
Yeah, I
and
get
they
that.
can look at
Yeah.
that and go, like, oh, that well, I don't know about doing that with my neck, right? And then I can go, cool, let's just move your feet closer, or you can choose how hard you drive your head into the wall, right? It's so easy to scale it.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I feel like a lot of people just wouldn't feel safe loading their neck because, like, it's not something we're exposed to anyway. So an isometric would
yeah,
be nice in that sense because
yeah,
you're having to do nothing as well. You're not thinking about, controlling the movement. You're just holding the
for
position,
sure,
right?
for sure. It's important to highlight the irony in that. In when somebody presents the idea that they feel unsafe with loading their neck and they do jiu-jitsu, we need to highlight the irony because it's like I completely understand you feel unsafe with that. That's valid based off your perception and your past
But you
experience.
could just
What you're
sport which is
currently
very
doing,
unsafe for your neck.
you are literally loading your neck right now. Like in the
Yeah,
sport, you just don't see it the same way, right? It doesn't mean it's not happening. So if you
yeah,
can
I get
understand that that's what you're doing, then all you need to do is reverse engineer that and think, okay, well, now what I do in the weight room, which is a nice controlled environment, by the way, is going to prepare me for what it is I want my body to do. So maybe I should load my neck in certain ways. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got hip external rotation for mobility. We've got neck focusing on extension,
Yeah.
focusing on isometrics to begin with, just as an entry point. So there's two big training points that could be taken away from this.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's
Okay.
like from my understanding, like I don't have like any kind of background with wrestling or anything.
Yeah.
Like you could just about do a single leg, right? But I've talked with high level wrestlers, and one of the things that they have told me through their training and growing up wrestling, and one of the reasons why the injury rates are perhaps lower. I mean, I'm not actually sure about this, to be honest, in terms of like statistically, but from their perspective, because they've come into jiu-jitsu, the injury rates are lower in wrestling because they take their movement quality or their movement just frequency. Like they actually train things from a gymnastic point of view, and they're very body aware, and they do long warm-ups, and they take the time to develop these kind of qualities. The injury rates are just lower. Obviously, you add the fact that you're not meant to necessarily attack joints in wrestling. That's not the goal. Whereas obviously
Yeah.
in jiu-jitsu, that's literally the goal of what you're trying to achieve. That's a pretty big factor as to why injury rates would be higher. But I still feel like it's worth highlighting just the body awareness. So it's almost like the fact that jiu-jitsu is still a bit in that kind of infancy stage, and with that infancy comes naivety, right? So we just kind of want to crack on with what we love doing, but perhaps we don't respect enough like how much
Yeah.
physical
So a
requirement.
wrestler would have just a massive foundation of movement
Yeah.
behind them coming in.
Anyone listening to this right now that is a that does jiu-jitsu, that has rolled with, like, let's say you're a purple belt, brown belt, whatever, that kind of, you got enough experience, and you have a wrestler come in who's a white belt, you're having a hard time with that person. Unless
Really?
unless you as a purple belt, brown belt is like, you're
Yeah.
competing at the highest level within your kind of belt category. I feel like
So it's just the
every
standard
normal
they come in at,
person,
which is just much higher.
yeah, just way fucking high. You feel it, like their base, their ability to move, just how like strong they are, and just all of that stuff. It's ridiculous, honestly. Like I have
Yeah.
really fucking hard time with those individuals, like many people in my position.
So from a training perspective, then, if you were to, there's a lot of people that would just, I guess, people that could be listening to this that just do jujitsu. They don't do any training outside of jujitsu. They
Yeah.
just do the sport itself. And you probably, I mean, what percentage of the members where you are kind of in this boat, would you say, where they just do jujitsu? There's no training outside of that, like in the gym, building up physical qualities to help them in the sport itself.
Oh, that's a good question. What I would say, like, I don't know if a lot of these guys and girls are training like S&C wise, or just like physical
Yeah.
preparation outside of like the gym that they actually go to train jiu-jitsu at.
Okay.
But if we have like 100 people on the mat, right, or 100 members that do jiu-jitsu, I'd probably see like 5 to 10 of them go into the gym and actually do some lifting. And I'm
Yeah.
familiar with, like, at the gym I'm at now, I'm familiar with the faces
Of course. Yeah.
that come into the gym area, right? And it's like, okay, you do jiu-jitsu because I've seen you on the mats. I also see you come in and lift. And there's a lot of people that I've just never seen in the actual gym area itself. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the percentage, because I would immediately think like, oh, maybe like half or something, but I wouldn't be surprised if the percentage is actually fairly low.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
which is
was
kind
going to ask you, based on this though, for the because that's quite a high percentage probably.
of,
What would be the lowest hanging fruit that someone could work on in the gym? What quality could they work on that translates into making them better in jiu-jitsu? If it
ooh,
was like a strength perspective, it might just be, I don't know, endurance, rolling around, building conditioning up for that. If there was one thing like one quality someone could work on and they're not in the gym yet, what could it be?
yeah, like a big bang for your buck kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Hmm,
Because it's quite a broad spectrum you could focus on, right?
it is, yeah. Like there's so many things.
But do you know?
That
I
makes me
feel like
not like the question.
say that again.
It's like I don't want to answer the question.
No, I know.
I want to
Uh,
protest answering
I
this
like these
question.
questions where it's like, if there's only one thing you could do,
Yeah.
because no one likes answering them.
I'm
So
like, fuck hypotheticals, man. I want to live in reality. I want us to all come in and spend 10 hours a day in the gym working on all the
yeah,
things we
but
need
I
to
feel
do.
like this is what this is what prevents someone who does, like, say, jiu-jitsu or another sport where they don't train for the sport they actually want to be good at and enjoy doing, and they
Mhm.
just do the sport, and then they either get hurt or they don't have the fitness for it.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's this overwhelm of, like, there's so many things we've got to work on. We've got to work on, from this conversation, we need hip external rotation. We need to do some
Yeah.
neck strengthening. Oh, I don't feel fit. I need to build up my conditioning. So there's three things already, maybe. So
Yeah, I hear that. I hear
you
that.
might not want to answer it, but, you can answer it if you want.
Well, yeah, no, I get that.
There's
I feel
one
like
thing.
if there was nothing, if you literally did nothing, as in you had no previous like physical capacity on you, and you're not experienced with like lifting, you haven't done like conditioning work, you've just come in, you've just started doing jiu-jitsu, or maybe you've been doing it for a couple of years, but you just do nothing physically,
Yeah.
I would probably just say, man, just go into the gym and learn how to do your compound moves of your squat, dead, and bench. Honestly, like I
Yeah.
think, I mean, that's going to carry over a lot to like your bone density, your muscle strength and mass, your tendon strength, like all of that stuff to the point where it's like, yeah, we can dive into the nuances with regards to the joint angles and like, oh,
Mhm.
what rate is this occurring and all that kind of stuff. But like, if you literally have nothing, I feel like you're probably going to get a big bang for your buck, like focusing on those and
Yeah.
just getting good at loading that and actually adapting to those things and
Yeah.
then expanding your horizon from there, probably.
Do you
Yeah.
see a big difference between that person who does train outside of jiu-jitsu compared to the one that just goes 7 days a week pure jiu-jitsu but doesn't do any training? Do you see, like, a difference between the physical capacities between the two? Like,
Um,
the jiu-jitsu guy who goes 7 days a week might be really good on technique, but then someone with some kind of strength and athleticism will come in and be training 3 days a week, and they might wipe the floor with them. I don't know. Do you ever see stuff like that happening?
okay, I would say that's like probably too specific where I've seen that exactly like that. But what I would say is I've definitely seen the difference between someone who trains jiu-jitsu regularly and doesn't do any strength training and someone who also trains jiu-jitsu regularly but also does strength training. And typically it is a situation where they can just because they have that strength advantage, they can just handle them a lot easier, or they just have more work capacity to just continue imposing their will in the role versus the person who just doesn't have that capacity at hand for sure.
Yeah, I suppose if you've got, I don't know, if you can go through a session and have more energy as well, you're probably going to be better at picking up drills and actually developing yourself better at certain
Right.
techniques as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you can literally just keep spamming moves and it's not just you doing a
Yeah.
terrible job because you're so fatigued, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You'll pick that up quicker.
Do you feel like this is coming away from training now a bit, but like the principles within the training in jiu-jitsu, I feel like it's quite strategy based and understanding what someone else is doing as
Hmm.
much as understanding what you need to do to get into a situation or out of a situation. Do you feel like there's like principles within jiu-jitsu that you could bring into normal training? Say you yeah, do you feel like there's principles in jiu-jitsu that you've learned that have come into your normal training that you use? Does that make sense, that question?
I think so, yeah. It's like
What have you
principle.
learned in jiu-jitsu that's helped you in your training outside?
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. Oh,
Because I feel like you have to be patient with jiu-jitsu. I mean, how long does it take to... You're purple belt, right?
hmm
How long did it take you to get there?
uh, at my rate, training inconsistently. That's a good question. How long did it take me actually? I want to say like probably like 6, 7 years, something like that.
Yes. So I feel like when you go into jiu-jitsu though, there's the expectation that this is the long haul if I ever want to get to like the high-end
Yeah.
belt. So I feel like there's definitely principles in place that people kind of learn and acknowledge when they're doing jiu-jitsu,
hmm
in terms of the way they're trying to progress. Like, obviously we're not progressing too fast because we're going to get injured or some other reason. So I thought there's definitely principles in place that would trade off into training in the gym for someone who didn't do jiu-jitsu.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. I'm also kind of like I'm trying to think as well if there's any specific times that I've had where something from jiu-jitsu was exposed that led me to see the link or kind of bring that into my own physical training in and of itself.
Yeah,
Um, and I feel like for me, it was like I didn't have. I feel like I was that person where early on in my jiu-jitsu training, I was fairly ignorant to that. And so I was kind of just like dealing with things as they were happening, and I never really took the physical side of it seriously because I never really linked it strongly to like a core value for me to actually stick with this well enough. And
Yeah.
only have I done that a bit more recently where I'm now reaping the benefits of that because I just have a lot more awareness in this domain from my own personal experience. Um, but it definitely comes to the things we talked about before with like my own feelings of like in terms of like me getting my body showing up in a certain way from my training, like the neck strains, and just recognizing these all these weird positions that we go into, and just how versatile we need to be, and how physical the kind of sport is. That I feel like a lot of that just comes into now when I look at my training and what's getting programmed for me. It is literally just like I don't even think like I need to dissect this exercise to how does this link to jiu-jitsu. I just look at this as like this is preparing me as a small component with regards to everything I'm doing in the program.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the entire program is what is just physically preparing me to handle everything that I feel like I need to handle or is going to be thrown in my direction. And the intention is that I can just handle what it is I need to handle on a moment's notice without feeling like, oh, I need to find a way to show up. It's like I'm doing that in my physical training, and that's going to naturally transfer over to what I'm doing on the
So,
mat.
so in a way, you've kind of reversed the principles from jiu-jitsu to you've actually learnt the principles in training first and then applied them into jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I was doing jiu-jitsu first before I understood like training principles, and a lot of that just came with ignorance. If anything, it was like, things are getting exposed to me in jiu-jitsu, and I'm just like, oh, okay, and like,
Yeah.
what? Okay, what do I do with this information, right? And then as I spent a lot more time and effort understanding the training principles and like physical preparation and what that looks like, I feel like that actually opened my eyes and set the playing field for me to start connecting the dots a lot more. And then one of the most useful things for me is like obviously seeking the coaches that I've sought out, but getting programmed by these different coaches and just experiencing these levels of exposure and just kind of seeing how that transfers over into what we're
Yeah.
talking about now. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. There's many ways to physically prepare, for sure.
Yeah. So talking about your training at the minute, obviously you
Yeah,
know I was going to ask you about this because I keep seeing this on your
I
social
know.
media.
I know where this is going.
So I'm going to try and explain the drill, and you're probably going to be like, "Let me explain it," because you
Yeah,
explained it really poorly. So the things I see on your social media lately are you're using a band, and you're either attaching it to a limb somewhere, either the foot or I think it's around the wrist, and then you're doing quite a ballistic movement to a position where the band hits its tension. Obviously, there's no resistance on this like there is with an elastic band. It's just pure tension as soon as you hit it. So it's
like
like
a rope.
your leg or your arm is hitting a brick wall. What is it
Yeah,
called again? Pulsing or pulses?
impulses.
Impulses. I was close. I tried to
Impulses.
remember it before this call.
Yeah, I hear that.
The, tech
Yeah,
the technique is called impulse.
impulses. Yeah.
Okay, so what is going on in these movements? Explain it better than I explained it, by the way. So if
I hear
anyone's listening,
you.
like,
Yeah,
what the
yeah,
hell
yeah.
is he talking about?
So it is basically take a rope attachment. So
Okay.
if you give the rope slack, right, now there's a bend in the rope. If you take all
Yeah.
the slack out, now it's just a hard dead stop, right? So usually the setup is you attach that round something sturdy like a squat rack.
Yeah.
You put a lovely carabiner on the rope. If, for those that don't know what a carabiner is, because I learned that word recently myself, it's just a metal hook
I
that
don't know what that is.
and what it's such a weird word. Anyway,
It's a weird word.
you attach that round the rope. You attach that onto like a wrist cuff that you can put on a
Yeah.
cable attachment. And then you have a wonderful recipe for whatever the opposite of disaster is, right? From there, you can just set anything like a joint angle wherever you want the rope to be taut, and
Yeah.
then in one way, you could just do it as an overcoming ISO, right? Like you could just you can take all the slack out, and now you pull against this thing as hard as you can.
Yeah.
That would be an overcoming ISO. You could do very small moves where it'd be a bit more like rapid reps, trying to be very, very quick with just
Hmm.
like muscle, like shortening like very, very quickly, right? And then you can do a bit more bigger movement, like right into the right into the rope being taut, and that would be your bit more like force, like your higher force kind of impulse.
Yeah.
And what you see is pretty much what you get. So if you just imagine what's happening at that joint, at that muscle, at the tendon, whatever, at the bone, you go from one position to the other very quickly, and then you just hit a dead stop. Obviously, that is just going to be force that enters your body. Your body has to respond with the force, and your body has to absorb the energy as all that shit gets,
Yeah.
acted,
So
right?
it's like addressing. It's like you're adding chaos into, because like most injuries happen when it's like, especially in jiu-jitsu, I suppose, when it's like straight impact and then something happens, similar
Yeah.
to the impulses, right?
I
So
would say with most injuries, a lot of the time the component that's happening is it's almost like an overspeed eccentric. I would
yeah,
say that's probably more realistic than like a dead stop going into like
okay,
concentrics. I mean, the way that you could combine the impulses with an overspeed eccentric would be with like if you took like the a reverse hyper and you have the pendulum swing and Dak or Brady, but DAC Performance and Health is where a lot of these impulses have come from what I've
yeah.
seen. He actually took the reverse hyperpendulum and just made
So
just the
that was just the really fast hamstring eccentric, right?
yeah, and
Where
you
you're
can
dropping
yeah,
down
yeah, he's
like
done
that.
it as a hamstring, yeah, as a
Yeah,
hamstring,
yeah, I'm following
but
that.
you could in terms of the reverse hyper, yeah, usually like people kind of
Oh,
do
you want a
that.
reverse hyper? Sorry, I'm thinking of a GHD.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. I've set up impulses on the GHD as well, but
Yeah,
that's a whole other story. Anyway,
yeah,
the reverse hyper or the hyper arm with the pendulum swing, you can pull against it and then let it kind of yank you, right? Which would act as an overspeed eccentric, which
right.
is probably like a bit more in touch with a lot of the time the kind of contraction types that occur with these increased rates of injury and stuff like that. So, like I've seen people with like shoulder and even pec injuries from an armbar. And
Yeah.
usually from an armbar, it's just because their arm has just been yanked really quick, like back behind them. And that pec and shoulder has just experienced length like really quickly, right? So that would be the thing or the quality that you would want to expose in training if you're thinking, how can I prepare for this kind of contraction type? So
Yes.
the impulses, I would say, in terms of just pulling against a dead stop, is a little bit different in that respect. But it's still a matter of like, just think about what a plyometric does in terms of being, usually you want it to be kind of a quick contraction type. Can we get some good impact? Can we get a high amount of force? Is it low ground contact and whatever the fuck you want to, whatever quality you want to leverage, right? Because I think there's multiple different plyo types. This is like a very localized plyo, is how I see it.
So when we're talking about the effects of where this, imagine what. Give me an example of where you've attached this lately, and I'll pick the joint. Have you've done one with shoulder external rotation, for example,
Yeah,
where you're. So when you're actually hitting the position where you've hit that dead stop, where the impulse actually happens, on like a tissue level, what area is that affected? Is that more of the tendony structure, or is that the more muscular, more tendony, right? Because of the, the force of the rate of change going
yeah,
on.
yeah. Like, you would definitely. I feel like you would definitely get quite a lot of all of it, in my opinion.
Right.
As far as I understand with tendons, and I know I'm not the person to talk through the subject on, but like Jake Tura, I think
Sure.
is his.
Yeah.
He's a really good resource on that. And from what I understand, there is like tendons typically are like kind of lazy in nature in the respect that they don't, it's almost like they don't want to be loaded, right? They store that kind of energy and they're like, right, fuck it off, right? And that's why you have that quick stretch shortening cycle. So then a lot of what we see in terms of influencing the tendon structure typically comes in the form of isometrics, because you influence the fluid that's being pulled in and pushed out
Yeah.
from, that kind of occurs a bit more in that type of contraction. So I think you do get the quick like force acceptance, if you will. So a lot of that for me is like, I actually also think about the muscle, like how the muscle has to contract really quickly to match this force that's just entered the body.
Yeah.
And then from the impact perspective, I'm also thinking about bone tissue and how, from a bone density or like cells within the bone and how they tend to respond to force types or loading strategies, right? This is a pretty good one for that too. Obviously, you've got like from compression, even if you just do like heavy lifting and you do plyos, you're going to get like a lot of that happening. But again, if we just break down what is an impulse, it's kind of like just a localized plyometric taking place. It's a really, and that makes it a really useful exercise type because it's easy to set up. I would say it's easy to scale. You know, people could argue that, well, you don't have a weight, you can't see how you progressively, just progressively overload how much you're yanking into it, progressively overload how many reps you're doing, or over how much time you're doing, or just, you know, just the sheer volume and how much force you're driving into it. The force part may be a little bit subjective, but you can feel that yourself for sure.
So how many reps would you
there's
be
a lot
doing?
going on.
How many reps and sets would you be doing on something like that?
So this has all been programmed for me from Brady,
Yeah.
the guy from DSC Performance and Health. To give a little bit of history, just because I want to give credit where it's due, and then I'll answer that question.
Yeah, go on.
I think he got these from Grant Fowler, so shout out to that dude. He was doing these as like ballistic movements, I think, on an actual reverse hyper, where he had it attached on his leg and he was letting his leg like swing back, and he's like sitting in a different position, so it's loading more like the front of the leg. And then I think he did it with the arm, and then I think what Brady did is he took that ballistic type movement and came up. Like, I don't think Grant did it against a fixed structure, is what I'm saying. I think maybe Brady then came up with that. I don't know. They can answer that. Anyway, back to the question at hand. What's been programmed for me typically, what I'll see is like I'll have to bang out like 2-3 sets of like 50 reps. Usually it's fairly high in terms of reps.
Yeah, I thought it'd
If
be
you
high.
think time and attention, very,
It's
very
very minimal,
tiny.
yeah.
Yeah, very minimal. So you can just bang out. Obviously, you get to the 25 rep mark, you're like, fucking hell, I want this to end.
Yeah,
Um, but that's obviously where change fucking happens. But I've even had it before where he's like, right, you're going to do this impulse move. You put 5 minutes on the clock.
and just
And
bang
for
that for
5
5 minutes.
minutes, you're just banging it out. Yeah. And sometimes that's a leg one. So you're single leg balancing on one leg, and the other leg you're just
So your stabilizing leg is just fried because you're
it's
trying to
just
stand up.
frying. Yeah, it's frying. And there was one time where I had to do it because it was like adductor, so it was on the end of my foot. So just think force coming in for the MCL, for the adductor. I've used this a lot for my MCL people as well,
Okay.
since learning these. Um,
But this would be end stage though, right? Because you're obviously going to work on a lot more prior to this. Or can you do these kind of early stage and very light in an easier range?
Originally, I was like, this feels very end stagey stuff.
Yeah,
But
because it
that was
looks
also
end
me.
stage rehab on the surface.
Yeah, but that was also me just conforming to the kind of norms of what I was taught at uni, which is like, you know, this is your early stage, you want to do this, and then you want to do that, and then you go into pliers. And it's like, I think a good question to ask is like, does it have to happen exactly like that in
Yeah.
order for us to get the best outcome? And so I actually insert them in a bit earlier than what I would consider to be um, end stage. But typically by this point, we have restored a lot of the range,
Yeah.
and we're starting to like we're actually exploring some strength stuff. I might start it first as an overcoming ISO just to get them familiar with the position itself we're going to do it in, and then trying to drive hard against the rope and building up that, and then we'll go into impulses
Yeah.
after. So this can actually occur pretty early because I even tell people as well, like, hey, look, like obviously in the video or when I've shown it to you, I'm yanking against it pretty hard. Bear in mind, like
Yeah.
this
You've
area for
never
me
done
is
it before, so be careful.
that yeah, I know what I'm doing. It's not it's healthy, so I'm not injured in this area. With you, you're already pulling a face, looking at me doing it 100%. You know
Yeah.
that it makes you nervous, right? Feel free to do what I just did at like 5% effort, and just
Yeah.
see how you feel. And oftentimes they'll come in, they'll take their time, they'll build up the confidence, and then they start ripping a bit harder, and they're like, yeah, this feels pretty good, you know.
Yeah. Do you feel like you
And
get
then
soreness from them?
oh yeah,
You do.
but yeah.
I've never tried them. I literally I've only seen it on your social media.
Yeah, in a
So that's why I
different
was
kind of,
intrigued
I
by
guess, in a different kind of way. Um, I don't know how to explain it
So it's
fully.
not like deep in the muscle belly, not them sort of DOMs.
Nah, yeah, not really like
You
that.
feel like it's more around the joint itself. So say you were doing them for the adductor,
Yeah.
the DOMs would be more towards, I don't know, the inside of the knee, or do you not feel like that is the case?
To be honest, like when I did the adductor ones, I didn't get DOMs from it. The one I've done recently was like a cross. It was like kind of cross body this position, and it's pulling from up. So I would yank up into this position. So it's
Okay,
kind of hitting. It's like internally rotated across the body. It's kind of hitting, like top of the
awkward
shoulder.
position.
Yeah, and that one was like a weird kind of like soreness, like right in that area for like a couple of days afterwards, and just like noticing that specifically, it does feel a little bit different. Like it's not like you
Yeah.
do a stiff leg deadlift, and then you're like your hamstrings are like fucked. Like that's what I feel anyway. But if I literally then if I had to do in comparison like three sets of 100 of just like hamstring pull, the position makes a big difference. So a lot of the impulses that we've done, if you look at it from a muscle length perspective, we are doing a lot of them in like middling ranges. Not to say that you don't do them at end length and
Yeah.
position either, but we do tend to do a lot of them in mid positions, just with the focus being drive a lot of force. So it's quite a nice position for muscles to like recover from, I guess. If you're doing a lot of like lengthened where there's like literal stretch going through it, you're going to be inducing more of that kind of like metabolic damage, if that's the right word. But you see
Yeah.
what I mean, right? Like, yeah. So there is a difference, and it does feel pretty easy, or they feel pretty recoverable, to be honest. Like you could hit impulses fairly regularly, I think.
Yeah, so
Throughout.
you are. I didn't actually think about where in the range you were actually doing the impulse, but you're
Mhm.
more mid-range when you're doing them.
From my experience, we've been hitting a lot of like mid-range
It'd be
kind of stuff.
interesting to see like an end range, like a lengthened range impulse, and the effects of that
Yeah.
the next day.
The difficulty with that, so if we think about it logistically, right, the difficulty with that, if I wanted to set up like end
Yeah.
range external rotation, like how can I impulse? Do you know that I can't go back any further?
Oh, I
So
see.
if
You
I
don't
wanted
have
it
that
in,
momentum to carry you forward in a
yeah,
way.
it's like I wouldn't get high force there. So that's where other stuff would come into play, like probably the hyper arm situation because it could pull you into that direction. Then it will be a bit more about letting it pull you to you pulling it back up. So it might not be a
Yeah.
dead stop, but it will give you that effect of going into the end range.
Yeah.
And then something else I'm thinking of. There is one we've done where I just hold a strap, like the same kind of rope. I just put it round a plate and I have that behind me, and I just have to like load as far into external rotation as I can.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that this guy's background is like I think a lot of baseball, so the amount of range these guys have is insane, man. But that would transfer quite nicely to jits, in my opinion.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, it'd be hard to Americana those people, that's for sure.
Just don't go
But
the other
like I
way.
say, there's always an end range. I don't like when in jits where it's like, oh, I can't get tapped to this because it's like, bro, you still haven't. I say bro because it is usually dudes that will think that. Although obviously women tend to have more flexibility actually, but perhaps they understand a bit better that they can still get tapped going into that range. I don't think they have as much of an ego. But yeah, it's like you will find an end range if you have more range than usual. We'll
Especially if
still
you're against someone who's good and they know how to reposition your shoulder to get you even further.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I guess This is gonna lead on to a question actually about who you feel like has more mobility coming into the gym: the person that has trained for years, or the person that has never lifted or never really trained or much experience there. Do you feel like there's a level of somebody who hasn't trained has more range of motion and more flexibility, even though they might not have the strength there? Do you feel
Mm.
like you see that?
Well, when we say training, are we talking?
Okay,
Mm,
let me narrow it down. So imagine a guy comes in, they've got a lot of muscle tissue on them.
yeah,
That sort of guy who comes in, macho guy who comes in,
yeah,
got no
yeah, yeah,
technique but loads of muscles, and he can't move
yeah.
that well. Do you feel like you get?
Abo-
Go
I
on.
would say above average. That person's probably going to be fairly tight and like not on an above. So I could generalize and say, typically speaking. So then, if you do get that dude who comes in who's jacked,
Yeah,
who
we're
hasn't done
generalising this.
martial arts, yeah, it would be an anomaly for them to be also really flexible. But then at the same time, I've seen it with like quite young athletes where they've never really taken their S&C seriously, and their only training was jiu-jitsu. Maybe they trained jiu-jitsu since they were like 4 or 5 years old, or they did some kind of grappling or martial arts, and they come in and they've always got like great flexibility from my experience anyway, anecdotally. Like they
Yeah.
tend to have really good flexibility, and then on top of that, obviously it'll just be worth it for them to train things a bit more seriously from an S&C standpoint. But they have a great foundation and base for flexibility. But then it also comes with the fact that they have all that range. They definitely use it in their rolling and their technique. And as long as it's
That's
one of those
just
things
because
where
they've had it from a young age, though, right? They've had that
yeah,
access for years and years, and they're using it all the time.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So they can explore it, you know, they can express it because they've always had that kind of capacity. Yeah, but I've had it where I've even heard, obviously you got the genetic factor and just like, are you going to be that anomaly kind of person? Because I've seen it with like Craig Jones is another really good person to watch, just for the crazy stuff he comes up with in rolling. But he's always been very flexible. Like you can watch his rolls and some of the positions he goes into, and he's extremely flexible. And he
Yeah.
said it himself. He's never really worked on his flexibility. He's just naturally kind of had that, and
Not many
it's
people
like
can
one of
say
those situations where it's like, all right, fuck you, dude. Like you get to just have this, you know. But yeah, fair play to him anyway.
So if you were to say you were starting jiu-jitsu, I
Mhm.
guess 30 years old, and you just consistently done that, what is the area you feel like if you didn't do any other training elsewhere, where would you see the most mobility improvements just by doing the sport on its own? Would you just see hip rotation improvements by doing it by itself because all the rolling, without any strength and conditioning to add on to it or to aid you
Mm,
in your mobility?
probably, yeah. I think you're probably right with it being hip external rotation. If we look at it as like the sheer volume,
Yeah.
yeah, probably that and like knee flexion
You feel like
because
there'd
you
be
just
improvements in knee flexion?
if you actually explore it, like it depends on the person. So I've definitely, for me personally, I remember early on in jits, I couldn't sit heel to butt and it was uncomfortable. And I realized that, and then I just kept doing it on repeat. Every class I would try and I would explore what I could there. While they're teaching the technique, I'm just there trying to sit heel to butt. And then eventually it was just like, yeah, I can sit heel to butt comfortably, right? So
Yeah.
if you take the person who's curious and is willing to lean into that, they're going to find out more versus if you take the person who just perceives it or potentially catastrophizes it, right? And they're like, oh, that's really uncomfortable. I'm going to avoid it. Then the opposite effect is going to happen, really.
I
So,
feel like we'd be the same in that camp just because we're more interested. So,
yeah,
as soon as you said that, I'm thinking you're sitting on your knees more. What's happening? We're getting more tibial internal rotation. I'm thinking of this sort of stuff. So, did you find that you got improvement? You got an improvement in your feet as well and the mobility there, and just ankle dorsiflexion, just because of the low positions you're always in.
yeah, and with that one to start with, I basically did it with in ankle plantar flexion,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was just focusing on getting
But you can get a
the
really good twist on tibial internal when you're sitting fully on the top of your shins as well.
yeah, yeah. Even as I was, to be honest, even as I was when I was doing this back then, I wasn't aware of any of that. I was
Yeah, you're just
literally
doing it.
just like, yeah, I
I'm
was like,
tired
this is,
here, so I'm going to
I
spend
need to
longer
make
there.
this comfortable. Yeah, this needs to be more comfortable. I'm just gonna spam this and kind of see. I didn't even think about it like that. I just did it naturally, I guess.
Yeah,
But then as time went on, and I learned that your ability to have your toes underneath you, right, extended, and in that ankle dorsiflex position and in that knee flex position, I was like, this is a pretty gnarly combo in terms of having this in your repertoire is quite nice because you can push off in a deep angle, and that's useful for so many things in grappling. So that's when I started intentionally like kind of jamming my toes more in that position and just like spending more time in that position. So now that's gotten more comfortable, you know,
yeah.
in comparison to before. So
I
yeah.
feel like that's a position that you would also use in everyday life. Like, I don't know, if you're doing stuff in the house, if you're doing gardening, I don't know, if you're on a
Sure.
site, if you're a trade worker, sitting down at the top of your shin like that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
For sure.
Um, I was going to ask something I forgot, and it was a really important one. Not an important one, but a fun one. I've
Oh no.
lost it. I'm going to have to pause it. I'm not
Hopefully
going
it goes back.
Oh, it's gone. It's gone completely. So I'll go on to my next thing I was going to talk about. Where do you see traditional rehab fall short with combat athletes? This could
Oh,
be a big conversation for you, but
yeah.
I reckon it could go
There's
on for ages.
there's a lot of hidden frustration. Well, not very well hidden, but there's some
Do you feel
internal
like that
frustration.
hidden frustration is just across the industry with everyone doing other things in different ways? Because
Probably,
I've
yeah.
got hidden frustration with, the things I see, but I'm in a different field to you.
Right, right. I hear that. Yeah, I think yeah, a big part of it. I mean, my frustration oftentimes comes from somebody coming to me and saying, this is my issue. I want to work on it. Blah blah blah. I'm like, cool, and we start working together. And I'm like, so you've had this issue for X amount of time? Have you worked with someone before and have you tried to create change? And it's like, yeah, I saw this physio. I went through the NHS or whatever, and it's like I was given this to
Yeah.
do. And I'm like, I look at that, and my first thought is, okay, they were given this thing to do at that moment in time. That clinician would have seen them then, would have assessed them then, and would have clinically reasoned, I'm giving you this based off what I know and what I'm seeing. And it's like I wasn't there. I don't really want to judge that, right? But then it's the aftermath of that, of where the negligence kicks in, that pisses me off, and it's usually going to be, oh, it was never, nothing was ever explored after that. Like they didn't. I went back to see them. They said, like, this isn't really something we progressed. This is just it. Like, do this with this band, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a bit like, whoa, there's a massive bridge, or gap, sorry, to bridge here, right? Where you're just missing so much stimulus that you need to get you from this point back onto the mats in an actual safe manner, right? And
Yeah.
that's what's crazy to me. And then because there's a knowledge gap, because I understand that there is quite a lot there to fill in. Even after uni, for me, I did sport rehab, not necessarily physiotherapy. And in sport rehab, I think maybe they cover like the exercise stuff a bit more than in physiotherapy. But even after the sport rehab degree, I felt like I was drowning in the exercise therapy side of things. I'm like, I need to learn more when it comes to training principles and all this stuff. And so that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. So if you just don't have that, there's going to be a big gap there, and
Yeah.
then they're not going to get the proper care they need. And then typically with the ignorance, it comes with the really wild suggestions. So when you just hear like, oh, maybe just don't grapple, it's like, well, what the fuck? Like, no, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. So how about you help me reclaim what it is that I want to do? So yeah,
So
you get wild things that come up.
would you say then it's so say somebody gets injured,
Hmm.
for the most part, I see the problem in who they've gone to see initially. Like if you're a combat athlete, you're doing jiu-jitsu,
Yeah,
going down an NHS route for rehab, you're never going to get the end game solution that you need. And
most likely not.
it's not the NHS's fault that they have a
Nah.
system in place which isn't to get people back to jiu-jitsu, is it?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I guess it's who you go to see to begin with and who you're exposed to begin with.
100%. I
Um,
mean, I'll use myself as an example in this case. Like when I broke my hand
yeah,
and um, it was like open reduction internal fixation done, right? So immediate, like 5 days after I had my first appointment with the hand specialist, and it was pretty cool. Like at the time, because it was like take the cast off, we could start working rehab already 5 days after surgery because I had the plate and screws holding the bone in place. But with him, a lot of the early stage and kind of mid stage stuff was great. Like I was bouncing ideas off with him and kind of like, can I layer on isometrics and all this stuff? And so I was adding on my own stuff, but a lot of the stuff I was given was helpful in restoring my range and getting some capacity.
hmm
But when I was like 2.5 months or something like that post surgery, and I came in for it ended up being my final visit because I showed him I could do push ups, right? And he's like, that's great. Usually this can take people 5, 6 months. And at the time, I was like, oh, look at me. But then I'm thinking, looking back on it, I was like, I wonder what population he's seeing, right, as well.
yeah, of
But
course, yeah,
then that was 2.5 months post surgery. When I came back into the gym, I knew I'm like, I'm nowhere near jiu-jitsu ready. And I
yeah,
tried a bench press, right? And at the time, if I remember correctly, I think my 1 rep max was like 90 kg or something. And I loaded up 40. and I could feel the discomfort on the bone. I'm like, this isn't even 50% of my 1 rep max, and that feels like I can't go any heavier than this. So I had to build up my, bone loading capacity from that point for
Yeah.
like, I think it took another couple months before I was like, yeah, I'm good to go back to training. So yeah, there's a massive gap there. The NHS isn't equipped for like this niche when it's like working with high level athletes. And then the unfortunate thing, especially with jiu-jitsu, it being in its infancy, a lot of the athletes there where they're training 2-3 times a day, like they don't have that much time or the privilege to do that and also earn good money. So they're not typically going to be in the best financial situation. So they
Yeah.
kind of, a lot of people have to rely on the fact that they need to seek these more, free services, if we call it that, and then get like kind of bad, outcomes due to that being their only port of call. So yeah, it's multifaceted for sure. It's unfortunate, and there definitely needs to be a continual, bridging of that gap, I would say. Yeah.
Yes. So to go back to the question, you see it falling short in terms of that transition to, oh, I feel okay now for
Yeah.
life stuff, but
Yeah.
there's big like here's jujitsu miles away from just life itself,
Literally.
and that
Literally.
transition from getting to close that gap just isn't there.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had it before with people as well where it's like, okay, I had this injury. Let's say it was like ligament damage and it happened X amount of time ago, right? And for them, it's like they did a bit of rehab at first, followed through the NHS, and it felt a lot better. And it's like maybe pain just eventually went away. But they know it's not 100%, and then they've taken like a big chunk of time off training, and they go from like working, let's say their wrist, right, at the capacity of up to like 40% of what jiu-jitsu is going to expose to them. I'm just making that number up, by the way. And
Yeah.
then they come back into jiu-jitsu, and the wrist starts hurting again, and they're like, fuck, like, what have I done, right? Like, have I re-injured it? And usually immediately, like before testing it, I'm like, we could have and we may not have re-injured the structure itself. This could also be your body just telling you, hey man, that level of information is unsafe. Like based off what we have available to us from you injuring this and what you've done since the injury, this isn't good enough, right? And now you're coming back
Yeah.
into this level, and it's like, fuck that. We're going to give you these responses. We're going to show up in this kind of way to highlight that you still have more work to do. Like, this needs to be addressed, right? And then typically when we go through, no, I mean, it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but obviously
You
I've
are
fought in jiu-jitsu a
fine.
lot. Yeah, I am. But like when we then go for rehab, it's like there's a lot of exposing of like, oh, you felt uncomfortable with this, we have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, this position sucks for you, we have to expose it, we have to train it. So you can't avoid those because they will get exposed,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Do you also feel like I feel like this happens in my situation a lot where somebody injures themselves, but instead of just maybe not training the knee because they've hurt the knee, they stop training everything altogether, and then everything comes down, everything becomes deconditioned. And then
Yeah,
in your situation, if they then hit the mats, it's not just the wrist that's playing up; they're just absolutely exhausted because their whole like capacity's come down in
yeah.
every sense. Do you get that a lot as well, where people just like, "I'll be back in 4 months when I feel good," and then it's just like now I
Yeah.
just feel like I can't even keep up.
I don't understand why it's such a pendulum swing. So you have that on one side, and then you have the athlete on the other side. The pendulum swings to the other side, where the
Yeah,
athlete's like,
yeah.
"Fuck it, I'm still just training at 100%." And it's like, can we meet
It depends
guys?
how
Like,
much you
guys, can we
value
meet in
and
the
enjoy
middle?
it, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like I want us to just meet in the middle, admit and recognize there's an issue, still train absolutely everything else. Like a big mistake you can make is just stopping training everything because your elbow hurts. It's like even if it's your right elbow, you can still train your left elbow. And then
Yeah,
people then worry about things from a symmetrical point of view, which I understand, but at the same time, you have things like the cross education effect. And also if you're going to base some of your rehab outcomes on the comparison of the injured limb to the non-injured limb, why are we letting the non-injured limb decondition and then have lesser capacity. Now we're comparing to a weaker limb, and
It's
how is that going to be
interesting. It's
reliable?
interesting you say this actually because is there any joint in the body that you know is symmetrical in terms of strength or mobility right now? Like for me, I know I have a huge amount of external rotation on my right hip. Left hip
Yeah.
has got minimal compared to the left.
Hmm.
But and even when it comes to maybe you're doing bicep curls, you're going to know how many you can do on the right compared to your left. So they're all different conditions anyway. But
Yeah.
when we are injured, I understand people do this because they do it with me as well. They will stop
Hmm.
training biceps completely because one bicep's hurting when you can still
Yeah.
continue that exposure on one side.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And I agree with that as well. Like for me, my hip ER on my right side is greater than my left, and then obviously I'm right side dominant, so I notice a bit more like
Yeah.
strength kind of output from that. So
So
I don't think,
you could say to that person who's worried about training symmetrically, you're so like asymmetrical at the start of this that it's all irrelevant anyway.
yeah, exactly. But then to add to that point, right? If you if if you let tissues decondition for the sake of achieving symmetry, that's a fool's errand, as far as I'm concerned. Because the outcome is just not what you think it is, and
Yeah.
you've just lost things in that process, and
Yeah.
that's an unfortunate situation, I would say. So from there, it's like, nah, you need to push. But even if you like, if you're still going into the gym, right? If we think about the implications that occur with injuries, right? If you still then have something to go into the gym for, that can aid you there physically with how your body's going to show up. So if we think like CNS and just continuing to build neural pathways, and then if we think psychologically and what you're going to do for yourself, then if we think like endocrine system wise and what you're going to do hormonal and how that can even influence the tissue healing from an indirect slash direct perspective, right? There's a lot of benefits, so it doesn't make sense to go into complete hibernation rest, and it
Yeah.
gives you zero opportunity. Like if you just completely rest, you have no opportunity to address anything.
Yeah, I
And
feel like as like a rehab professional, you'd agree with this as well that every injury is an opportunity, and I feel like that's everyone would say that, but it's actually very true as well. Like I think every injury I've had, I've then either worked around it, or I've started working on something else because I had time to work and a bit more focused towards that other area that needed work, and I feel like I've always learned a hell of a lot every time I've been injured.
mhm,
And
for
if I
sure,
just stop training, then obviously that isn't going to happen.
precisely that. Yeah, literally, it's all like little problems to solve at the end of the day. And if you just stop facing the problem, then how are you really going to try and conjure up and understand like how you can show up and create solutions to that,
Yeah,
right? So yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. And the same's happened with me, like when I've had time off, and oftentimes when I've had a lot of extended time off and I come back, I actually feel better, like, and I know and I feel crisper and my jiu-jitsu's smoother and stuff. Or there's some movements where it's like, oh, this was actually the opposite, like not as smooth, but because I'm still watching the sport often and I still think about it, there's still some developmental stuff occurring. And then because I'm
Yeah.
training my body physically, it's like I'm building the physical qualities behind what's needed. So sometimes where I've had time off, but in that time I've actually improved, like my coordination, my strength, my speed, my endurance, whatever. It's like I come back in and I'm finding doing these moves were actually easier than before.
Yeah.
But it's like, I haven't done jiu-jitsu in like 9 months. Like that's crazy, right? But it's like, yeah,
You've been
like
watching it on TV, you're watching on the YouTube.
yeah,
You've
watching
just
all the
immersed in it all the
movies.
time, studying the rehab for it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely helps. I do it for the love of the game. I do it for the love of the sport. I
You
like
never
watching
switch
the
off from
sport.
it, even when you're injured, and you have to switch off from it to some degree. You're still in it.
Yeah, still in it because like
Well,
it
obviously
it
working it
takes
as
up
well. So
space. Yeah, for me it takes up space. I think probably a good question, or not a good question, but a good way to understand if you think about something a lot as if it occupies a lot of your daydreaming.
okay, yeah, and you feel
And
like
I,
it does.
yeah, like if I drift off and daydream, it tends to be about something jiu-jitsu related, or maybe
Yeah,
even rehab or training related, or maybe some
yeah.
other stuff.
I agree. It's quite
Maybe I'm more
sad. I
interested
agree.
in some stuff.
When I daydream, I start thinking about exercise selection.
It makes me sound really boring, actually. Fuck.
Right, it's just two boring guys having a chat with each
Yeah,
other. There's
this is
nothing
all we think
to
about. Yeah, there's nothing more interesting in life than just us moving around,
trying weird
apparently.
drills
Yeah.
and then talking about it.
Exactly, yeah. Coming on here, spending our time chatting about it.
Yeah, I was meant to ask you about the you were doing depth drops the other day. How many were you
Yes.
doing? Single leg for 5 minutes
Uh,
straight?
I don't know how many
Oh,
ended
you
up
didn't
being
count the reps.
40 minutes straight.
Sorry, yeah, 40
Yeah,
minutes straight. Yeah,
40
I
minutes
mean
straight.
that sounds like crazy. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't actually that bad.
Wait, it was 20 minutes on
I,
one leg, 20 minutes on the other leg. Please tell me it
well,
was
it was 40 minutes, and
right.
every time I jump back, I would just alternate legs each rep.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah.
That sounds a little bit better. Still not nice, but
Yeah, a little bit better, but not as great. And it was still just 40 minutes. So like 7 to 10 minutes in, I'm like, I'm bored, and then you overcome the boredom and you're just like in a flow and you just keep going. And then you look at the time, you're like, oh fuck, okay, like another 10 minutes,
how
seven
were your
minutes.
knees the next day? Was it the first time doing that?
Fine. Not the first time doing a depth drop, but definitely the first
No,
time
no, doing
doing
40 minutes
like
of
the most I'd done before that was actually just explore this for like 10 minutes or seven
yeah, yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
It was never that. That's why when I saw the 40 minutes, I messaged.
You think is that a
Um,
typo? Is that supposed to
yeah,
say
literally, I
40?
messaged him. I was like, just checking 40 minutes is what you meant to write. Even in the notes, it was like, yeah, we're doing high volume. It's like, okay, I know you're saying it's high volume, but is it meant to be 40 minutes, right? So I still had to ask, and he was just like, yep. And I'm like, cool. So
Yeah.
did the 40 minutes. It was a good one to highlight because I have a history with my left ankle. Like that got popped in a heel hook. Like,
I was going to say,
yeah,
what do you feel like is more exposed when you do that amount of depth drops? Like, do you feel like it's knee heavy, or do you actually feel like it's foot heavy? Because that's a hell of a lot of reps,
all of the above, and then whatever you have more of a personal issue with or history with is going to get highlighted if you haven't properly
and
addressed it.
and that would be the goal of doing that accumulation of reps to highlight. Because obviously, if we're doing 10 drops on each side, you're going to bias the strong tissue as such, right? But when you hit 40 minutes worth,
Mhm.
that strong bit of tissue is now like, we can't do this. We need to start loading other tissues as well. Is that the concept behind it? So then
You
you
could,
effectively
yeah,
target the weaker strands.
you could say that. I think at the end of the day, with the depth drop, it's like for me specifically, and because it was also asked of me to work this up towards what you feel like 90-95% of your max height is. So it's not
Okay.
like, hey, I want you to do 40 minutes of depth drops, but at a really easy height of a few inches, so you feel like you can just do this for 40 minutes and it's not challenging. It's like you want to take it to the point where it's like
Like
this
each
is
drop, you
challenging.
had to consider it and think about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But then you also want to understand, like, can I get to a point where I don't have to consider it and understand? Do you know what I mean? It's like, can my
Was
body
there a
just
point
shrug
in
it?
that 40-minute window where you thought this is becoming second nature, just dropping off this box and catching it? Because there's,
For
I
my
mean, there's a
for
lot of
my
reps
right
in
leg, yeah. For my right leg, that was happening,
there.
but
Okay.
for my left, not so much because I have a history
So you had
with
to
my
think
left
about it
ankle.
each landing and such.
Yeah, what I noticed is if I shied away from it on my left ankle would hurt more. And then when I leaned into it and actually like got my whole leg to like stomp and accept the force, it felt better, like an energy transfer kind of thing. Because obviously you do the single leg depth drop. If you look at it from the side view, if you look at it from the sagittal plane, right, and someone just gives you a whole lot of hip flexion, forward trunk lean, you're
Hmm.
going to assume there that they're using a pretty decent hip strategy in order to share the load to that area more so. But the movement and the nature of itself forces you to go down and forward. So you're
Yeah.
going to get flexion at all of these segments, right? If we
Yeah,
call it
yeah,
that. So your ankle dorsiflexion, your knee flexion, your hip flexion. So you could absolutely use it to highlight where this person is not going to be perhaps happy or comfortable or even sensitized to accepting force into that kind of area. And I think that, I mean, a good example of that was some of the crazy shit that came out with Neymar's ACL rehab. ACL reconstruction rehab, even like
yeah.
obviously the early one was like them forcing the range of motion and like him screaming and people being like, "Yo, what the fuck? This is pretty controversial." But even after that, it looked like they were doing plyos pretty early, and they got him to jump over a hurdle, and you see him land, and it's all like his torso is literally going like parallel with the floor, and he's hinging all in. It's like he doesn't want to accept any load into the knee, which is
Yeah.
understandable, right? So you could say, yeah, like if we just hit this for 40 minutes, we know you got a history here. Things are forced to show up, and then what I like about it, because this is even the same with high volume joint moves, do this arm swing 125 reps, right? A sensation is going to come up, whether you have a history of it with the area or not, right? And then it's a matter of how you deal with that. Like, are you able to continue through that sensation and move past it? Can you tune in and get like unnecessary tension to die down? Can you connect with the tissues that have to shorten and lengthen? So there's a lot of like felt sense stuff occurring, which I like a lot, which he does talk about a lot, my coach, right, in the programming stuff. And I feel like that's been pretty instrumental actually with like the adaptations and how my body's able to show up under physical stress, which has been pretty cool to see the differences from like 7 months ago to today.
Yeah.
So yeah, to come back to the single leg depth drops, I think it's one of those where you can look at it specifically like that, just as you said, and then you can also look at it as like this is just the I don't think overarching is the right word, but this is just the overall, like this fits the overall idea that we want the body to just be able to handle and show up under different stresses.
Yeah.
And why not 40 minutes of single leg depth drops as like your main thing of that session, you know?
Yeah. So that was all you done that session.
No. There was
A bit more.
there was other stuff. Yeah, then I did that was the same session I did deficit deadlifts. I'm pretty sure. If I go, but I'm literally like pulling up now. Yeah, 40-minute running clock. Yeah, then right after that was a deficit deadlift, working up to a set of 6 heavy. And then it was like some hip, like a bunch of hip stuff, like some hip rotational stuff later, and then even a lot of toe. We did a lot of toe joint moves. So it was like 3 sets of 75, flexion, extension, and even like
Display.
yeah, adduction, which I've got more connection with now. That's always been a really weird one. But 3 sets of 75, like really aggressively, just pull into the end range as much as you can. Both were like it burns your
Well,
foot. And
it's interesting you mentioned about the toe stuff, because I remember I went through a cars practice, and I'm not even joking. It was about 380 days, like long streak. I think
Fair play.
it
Nice.
was like full on. It was great.
I love
It was
that.
boring, but it was a good
That's
streak.
longer than mine. That's longer than mine. I think I did 10, like 9, 10 months of every day, like hitting the routine,
Yeah,
and then it
it's
just
quite a lot still,
phased.
to be fair. But
Yeah,
now, like I don't. I'll be honest. I don't have as much. I don't put as much value in that system alone now. So I don't have a cars practice. I do other stuff
sure.
as a daily kind of movement practice. And to be honest, my training gives me the movement I need. So I don't have a daily practice in there. But I
Yeah,
remember when I used to do that daily routine, and I feel like the toes are very quick to learn because of the sensory feedback you get from the feet.
yeah,
And the ability to move my toes and do like a toe splay and then go pinky down to the big toe, I was great at it then. I try and do it now and it's gone. But it will come
yeah,
back quickly if I try to do it again. But they're
for sure.
definitely a quick area to learn movement.
Yeah,
Both
definitely.
like the
Especially
hands
if
and
you
the feet.
if you just spam it, like you did it every day.
Yeah, but
It's
it
one
was
thing.
like 5 reps a day. That was all it was, but it was every damn day for 380 days or something.
Yeah,
And
it's
most
forced to
fully
occur.
functioning feet, but like not something to showcase, but
Here's a cool party trick. Yeah,
she's a cool party trick, yeah, for
we just
weird
watched.
people in the party.
Yeah, it's like, bro, put your shoes back on, please.
Yeah. Anyway, I should probably round this up because we're at an hour and a half. So,
Fair enough, bro. Good
just
chat.
where can people find you if they want to learn more about jiu-jitsu and more about rehab and just your
Um,
profile?
Instagram is the best place to find. That's my main social media, and I don't even post enough on there. Hopefully, that's going to change. At
We all say that.
Yeah, we all say that. Yeah, Rolls and Rehab is where you can find me on Instagram. That's the
Yeah.
main place. Yeah,
For years I didn't actually know what your first name was, like, because we followed each other for how many years? Like, I don't know, like
yeah,
eight
that's
years? I don't know, long time.
yeah,
Because
ages.
Rolls and Rehab just stuck, and I was just like, that's Rolls and Rehab. That's not Lawrence.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah, Rolls and Rehab. Yeah, probably seems weird that I have an actual personal name rather than just the brand
At
itself.
least my name on Instagram is my name, so
Yeah, it's
I
your
can
name.
get
It's
that
pretty
wrong.
hard to get that wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Thank you for the conversation as well. It's a good one.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, man. It's
Cool.
been
Cheers,
fun.
man.